Here is something that most people ignore when it comes to learning Excel. We learn various functions of Excel, but we don't learn when to use them. So in this video, let's flip this whole thing on its head and start by looking at 10 business problems and then figure out which formulas and functions of Excel can help us solve these problems. These problems are going from beginner level to the complex level with 3 really advanced examples towards the end. And this video is part of my free data analyst playlist on YouTube. You can watch the rest of the videos in this playlist by referring to the video description below. I also have a web page where all the information, files and links about this free course are maintained. Let's go. This video is sponsored by Notion. I'll talk more about them later. So the 10 problems that we are going to look are these. As you can see, they go from easy to difficult, with these 3 being more complex ones. So let's go ahead and solve each of them, and along the way we are going to learn all of these essential Excel functions and formulas, as well as concepts like using operators like star, hash, etc. Let's go one at a time. A quick note about the data. The data is human resources data of our employees and their gender, department, salaries and other information. We have been using this data on and off in the previous lessons. But if you look at this data is neatly structured in an Excel table with the table name staff. You can grab a copy of this data file along with these concepts in the video description link below. So our first one is total salary and head count by department. As we have got lots of data, let's say you have got an upcoming HR meeting and you just want to explain to the meeting that we have got all of these 6 or 7 departments and how many people work in each department and what is the total amount of salary we pay in the departments. To do this kind of a thing, we are going to add a new sheet. I'm going to call this as 1, and in here we want to list all the departments, their head counts and their total salaries. Let's set up the report format like that, and here I want to list all the departments. For now, what we are going to do is we are going to go to the data table here and copy the entire department values, Control C, come back here, right click and paste as values. This will give you all the departments, but you can see that departments like business development here are repeated many times. So once the data is there, I can select this entire column and use the data ribbon remove duplicates option to just remove all the duplicate department names. For now, I'm just going to select without expanding and just say remove duplicates and click OK. And that's going to take out all the duplicate values and leave 1 per department like that. So here we no longer have those duplicates and we have the department information. They will appear in the order we pasted them, but if you want, you can also sort this data. Next up, let's go ahead and figure out how many people work in each department. For this kind of a thing, we want to count in the data all the employees that are in the training department. So essentially, we want to look at how many times this word training has appeared in the table here. To do this kind of a thing, we can use the COUNTIFS function. So that's the first concept that we are going to learn. We can say COUNTIFS. So this function, it's going to count by applying various conditions. So first option for this is the criteria range, and this is my staff table. So staff square bracket, and we can point to the department column directly like that, comma, and what is the name of the department. Now the name of the department we can write in double quotes like training, but as we already have the value here, it's better to just point to the value there directly in B3. And when you close bracket, you're going to get the value as 24. To see the department headcounts for all of these others, you just have to drag this formula down and you will get the headcounts for everybody else. Now here is a pro trick. If you are using Excel 365, you can also, instead of saying B3, as we do need the headcounts for all of these departments, take the B3 out and point to this entire range here directly. What this does is it's gonna count individual departments and automatically show the entire range for you here directly. So see what happens when I hit enter, you're gonna get this entire values here. This is called spilling and it only works in Excel 365 or Excel on the web. So if you're using an older version of Excel like Excel 2016 or 2013, then you will not be able to do that. You will have to write one formula and then drag it down. Let's do the same for total salary. This time we are not interested in counting. Rather, we want to add up all these values, the salary values, where the department is training. To do this kind of a thing, we will use a function called SUMIFS. So here is how you can write it, SUMIFS. And this time you'll need to specify what is the range that you want to sum up. So the range is staff table, salary column, and the criteria range is staff table, department column is here. And again, if you're using Excel 365, you can just drag this whole thing directly there. And that's going to give you total salaries for each department here directly. You can select this entire column and apply a currency formatting like that so that we can see the values in millions. So for example, training department with 24 people, the total salary is 2,013,000 something. Whereas engineering department with 26 people is 2.1 million. Given these two sets of information, you may also want to calculate something like average salary. So let's go ahead and do that quickly. And here you can use the AVERAGEIFS function to directly do it against the data. You can also alternatively take this number and divide that with that number to come up with the average here. Let's go ahead and use the AVERAGEIFS instead. So here I want to get the average salary. So we're going to again say staff table salary column is what we want to average. Staff table department is here. And even this formula, you can select multiple values like that. And it's going to tell you what the average is. And this tells you a better story. So for example, here I can see the training department has a higher average of $83,884 as against something like engineering, which has 81, or marketing, which has 64,000. Before we move on to the second concept, let me give you a small challenge. So just as we have calculated total salary and headcount, can you calculate the permanent headcount? This is where in the data table, you can see that some employees are permanent staff, like all of these people here, but we also have other kinds of people in our data. So further down, you will find that we have got fixed term staff, and even further down, there are some temporary staff. So I don't want to count all of these fixed term and temporary people, just the permanent people in each department. How would you do that? Give it a try and add that as a column here. Our second business question is, let's say we want to look at all the employees with more than 100,000 salary. You can do this in two ways. One is you can use manual filters, and the other one is you can also use the filter function. First, let's try with manual filters, and then I'll introduce you to the filter function, which we then go in elaborate more in the next example. So here in the data, let's say you are in a hurry and you just want to see every employee with more than 100K salary. You can apply the filters by pressing Ctrl+Shift+L on your data. And once the filters are added, you can use this thing here, number filters greater than, and then type the salary limit. When you hit enter, you're going to see all the people with more than 100K salary. That is a lot of people in this chocolate company. And here in the status bar, you can also see how many records are found. So for example, 47 out of 260 people have more than 100,000 salary. Now let's say you don't want to manually apply the filters. You would want to see this extract in a sheet like this. Here we can use the filter function for that purpose. This function is a new formula added to Excel 365, And it is a really powerful function that can be used to extract subsets of data that meet criteria. So we're going to say filter, and we would like to see the entire staff data. So I'm going to say staff, and then include is where you specify the criteria. So the criteria is a really simple one. Staff table salary column needs to be more than 100,000. So we'll just say greater than and then write the 100,000. And when you close bracket and hit enter, it's going to give you that filtered list here as a split range. You can see that, it automatically expands to all these columns and rows and shows you all the data. You can double check this by selecting all of this data. You can see that here when I selected, I have the same count of 47 values. One problem with the filter function is it only filters the data. It doesn't apply the formatting. So for example, all of these here, they were nicely formatted as a date in my data. Whereas here, I see them as number representation because Excel thinks dates are numbers. You can pre-select the entire range where your filter formula may go and apply date formatting to that, so that automatically when the filter formula does its thing, it will show you in the date formatting. Same for these numbers, you can apply decimal formatting, and here you can apply the currency formatting. Many times when we use filter, you may want to not just see the data, but also the header information up top. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this entire range, make it bold and fill a color. And now in this cell here, I'll just ask Excel to get me the same headers as my staff table. So for this, we are going to say staff table, open bracket. And if you scroll all the way down, you can see that we can also access the headers of the table. For this, you need to use hash headers as an option. You can just scroll down and select this, double click. So Excel writes it for you. Close the square brackets and hit enter. And you're going to get the headers as they were written in the data table. When you are looking at it, you might think, okay, Chandoo, this is all good, but for my extract, I don't need to see all of these columns. All I care about is employee ID, their names, first name, last name, and everything, department, and salary values. So you don't want everything, you just want a subset of the data. This is where we can combine the filter function with a different function like CHOOSECOLS to tell Excel that once the filter has done its job, we would like to see, for example, column number 1, 2, 3. We don't want to see 4. We want to see 5 and 6th column. So let's give it a go. So here I have set up an area for us. I want to see all employees with greater than 100K salary, but just the columns 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. So here we are going to say filter staff table salary greater than 100,000. While we are at it, instead of hard coding this number like that, you can also put it as an input cell value. So I'm going to point to this cell here, which is F67. Right now F67 is blank, but we are going to fix that in a second. And when you hit enter, as initially F67 is blank, it's going to give me everything because it's thinking greater than 0. Now in this cell here, I'm going to type 100,000. And you'll see that as soon as I type, I'll get a subset of people. But I can go even higher. So for example, I can go 115 and we'll see even fewer people. Now, we don't want to see all these columns as I mentioned. We just want to see a subset of the columns. So we will take the filter function and send this to the CHOOSECOLS function. And here we are going to now learn a powerful concept called nesting. This is where we take the output of a formula and then pass it to another formula so that you could do more powerful things. So this new function is called CHOOSECOLS, and we are going to say, take this entire filter output and from this, give me column number 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. You can comma separate and mention any number of columns, and when you hit enter, you're gonna get just those columns directly. Again, a quick note of caution, both these functions, CHOOSECOLS and filter, are only available in Excel 365 or Excel on the web. If you are using an old version of Excel, unfortunately, these kind of formulas are not possible. Now that these are done, you may also want to add a cherry on the top by setting the headers correctly. For this, again, we are going to do the same thing, and this time we are going to say staff #headers, and this is going to give you all the headers like you see earlier. But we also don't need all the headers. We only need the headers 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. So we can pass the choose columns to this as well. We can say choose columns from the headers 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. And that's going to give you only those headers from the table and that data point. And all of this is dynamic. So if I change my requirement and say, I want to look at, for example, 108,000, I'm going to see all of those employees here. Later on in this video, I'll tell you how to access individual columns of this data. For example, you may want to count how many such people are there, or you may want to average all of these salaries. How to do that, we're going to cover in the later on aspects of this video. Okay, let's pause here for a minute. One of the challenges when you're learning all of these technical concepts is how do you keep track of all of this information and how do you retain all of this knowledge that you're learning? This is where the sponsor of the day, Notion, comes into picture. Notion is a powerful and amazing note-taking app that I use to chronicle and maintain all the knowledge that I'm learning. So for example, let's say you have just learned how to use the XLOOKUP function or how to use the filter function. You could use Notion to keep track of all of this information and help you supercharge your learning better. So let me show you a quick demo of Notion AI, which is a powerful companion that I have been using to help me learn and understand technical concepts better. Let's take a look at this. So here we are in my Notion, and I'm going to make a page to help me learn Excel formulas and functions. Let's give this a nice icon. Let's list down all the important functions that I want to learn. And for each of them, I'm going to set up separate pages where I can track my learning progress and collect all the resources, notes, and information. For example, let's start with XLOOKUP. So I'm going to add a new page on XLOOKUP. And here, first of all, I would like to watch a YouTube video to understand how this function works. So I'm going to set up the video link here and I can paste the link. Alternatively, I can also use the / and search for video and paste the YouTube link there so that the video is directly embedded right inside this page for me. Let me add some more notes to my XLOOKUP page. I also have a web page where the XLOOKUP information is available and I would like to review that to help me learn. This is the page. It is a big article that explains various things about XLOOKUP, and I'm not really sure if I understand everything in one go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this article, Ctrl+C, and go back to my Notion page and paste the article here. And now all of this information is part of my notes, and that is the XLOOKUP thing. Like this, I can gather information about all the functions that I want to learn. Once I have all the notes here, I can then use Notion AI to help me learn and supercharge my process. For example, I can go to the XLOOKUP article here. As you can see, there is a lot of information. So what I could do is I can go to a place here and press the space bar to activate the Notion AI. And then I can ask Notion AI to add a summary of this article so that I can get the gist of the article in one go. I can accept this summary so that it is now part of my notes and the main article is followed by that. One of the cool things with Notion AI is you can also ask it to summarize in your own language. So for example, you can press space anywhere and then ask it to summarize in Telugu. And it's going to write down the information in your own language. And this is quite helpful because many of us are used to learning or accessing information better when it is in our own language. Whenever we are learning new things, a powerful and proven way to solidify our knowledge is to test what we are learning. Again, we can use Notion AI to help us in this process. For example, I can come here and then I can say, can you test me on XLOOKUP? Make 5 questions. And Notion AI is gonna test you on XLOOKUP by preparing some questions. This is a simple but very powerful way to test your knowledge and see where the gaps are. Do check out the Notion AI using the link in the video description below. Use that to supercharge your learning process. Thank you, Notion, for sponsoring this video. Our third business question is all female employees with more than 100K salary. And here we are gonna kind of piggyback on what we already did. So instead of writing new formulas, I have set up this worksheet as all such female employees, and we want to see columns 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. To do that, we can use multiple conditions in filter function. So we are gonna go back to the same filter, staff table, and then staff table salary is greater than the F67 cell, but that's not enough. We also need to check for the gender of the employee and then make sure that we are only looking at female employees. So when you want to write multiple conditions, you need to start by putting brackets around each condition, and then the second condition needs to be multiplied with the first one. So we'll write star, open bracket, and then inside here we write the second condition. So staff table gender is female. Again, you could hard code these values here. You could also, for example, link it to a cell like this one here and then use that as an input cell. I'm just gonna hard code because our question itself is female employees. Once this part is done, you can close the filter formula altogether and hit enter, and you're gonna see just a subset of employees. And here you can see clearly that we are only looking at the female employees. This time around, we would like to see the gender column as well, which is the 4th column. So I'm gonna adjust this as columns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, as these columns are all continuous and they start from 1 and go up to 6, you can also use a different version of the filter rather than the choose columns option. So here, instead of saying staff, I can say in the staff table. So we can open a square bracket to say in the staff table. And then you can open one more square bracket and then select the first column that you want to extract. This is employee ID. Close this square bracket, colon, and then open one more square bracket and then select the salary column as the last one. Close all these square brackets, and essentially what you're saying here is, if you look closely, you're saying in the staff table, I want to start with the employee ID column and then I want to go up to the salary column. So you want every column in between from employee ID to salary. And once you say it like that, this filter function is just going to give you those 6 columns instead of everything. So this is a much better syntax than the choose columns one because our columns are continuous and they go from 1 to 6. You could use the same approach when you have 3 to 7 or 6 to 9 or something like that as well. Time for another challenge. While looking at the female employees with more than 100K salary or whatever was the F67 value, if you also want to add one more condition that says those employees must have joined our organization in the year 2020 or after. So if you look at the data table here, we have got a start date as well. And essentially we are looking at employees who are with us in these 2 years alone. So we don't want to pay attention to this 2 years. How would you do that? Give it a try and let me know in the comments. Now let's go to the next one, which is I want to look at the lowest, highest and top 5 salary values. And here we are going to learn about min, max, large and sort+take functions. All these 3 functions, min, max and large, are available in most versions of Excel, but the sort and take functions are only available in Excel 365. Let's take a look at them. So here we would like to first try this for all employees and then eventually do this for male and female as well. So if I just want to get the lowest value across all the employees, we can straight away use the min function for that. Minimum of staff table salary column. And that just tells you what that value is. It's $28,160. Let's apply currency formatting on all these cells. You can select all the cells and you can use this key, or you can also press Ctrl+Shift+4. For the highest salary, the logic is similar. We just use the max function. Max of staff table salary column. And that's going to come up with a value. As the value is too big for the cell, Excel is showing me these hashes. Let's make this column wide enough. And there is the value. How do we get the top 5 salaries? These are the highest 5 salaries, and to get these, we can use the large function. We can say large staff table salary column, and then you can specify the K value. K is going to be 1 for the first person, and that'll be 120,000. And in the next cell, we write the exact same formula, large staff table salary, but this time we say 2. Coincidentally, the second highest salary is also 120,000. And then when you add the rest of the numbers, you're going to get these. Normally, when you're using the large formula, you may want to set up the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a range like this. And then instead of writing these values, you can point to the cell like that. That way you can drag this formula down and you get to see all the values by referencing these. Many times when we use these kind of things, you don't want these to be visible when you create this a report for your colleagues or managers. You can also hide this column so that the numbers stay there and help you calculate the values, but they're not obstructing the view or don't make it look clumsy. So that is how we can do this part. But if I'm interested in all employees, let me show you an alternative for these values, the top 5, using a different version that we could do with the sort and take function. Excel 365 adds new powerful functions to work with all of your data, and one of them is the sort function. So for example, if I simply say sort my staff table salary column and hit enter, I'm going to get all the salaries, not just the top 5, from lowest salary here up to the highest salary, the 120,000, all the way at the bottom. Here we are. We can take this sort formula and tell it that when you are sorting, sort it in the descending order. So that's the third parameter. The index is used if you have bigger data and you just want to sort it on a specific column. And here, if I say -1, I'm going to see 120,000 up top with all of these values. Now, once the sort has finished its thing, I don't want to see everything. I just want to see these 5 rows. So this is where there is also a take function. What it does is it takes a certain number of rows or columns from your data. So after sorting has done its job, just take the first 5 rows. So take 5 is going to give you only those 5 values. So this is another way of getting the top 5 salaries. In this case, we are sorting this entire data. You can also use other variations for these formulas to get the top 5 values, and each of them have its own advantages. For example, with the take approach, if I change my mind and I want to see 10 values, I can easily update this to 10. In fact, you can also take this out, the number 5, no pun intended, and link it to a cell. So for example, let's link it to this cell here. So I'm going to say I12. As I12 is blank, we're going to get a calc error. But now if I go here and then put 10 there, I'm going to get all the 10 values. Remember, with these kind of spilling formulas, Excel only gets you the value. The formatting doesn't happen. So it's a good idea to pre-format the values so that if and when the spill happens, you will see the formatting. And now this is a dynamic thing, so I can change this 10 to, for example, 5 or 8, and I'll get that many employees. How awesome is this? Now let's take it up a notch and instead of looking at just all employees, let's figure out how to do it only for male employees or only for female employees. As a challenge, try to take it up yourself, but I'm going to show you my solutions now. To get the lowest salary only for male employees, we can use the MINIFS function. This is available since Excel 2019 or 2016, I believe. So it's been around for a while, and what it does is it will tell you the minimum value by applying a criteria. Just like we have got COUNTIFS, SUMIFS and AVERAGEIFS, this also works the same way. So here, staff table, salary column, staff table gender is same as whatever I have in D3. And you can lock this as $3 by changing the reference style. You can either manually type this dollar symbol, or you can, while typing this, press the F4 key a few times so that the dollar gets added automatically. So we now get the male one as 28,160. I think the lowest employee is the male employee, and that's why these two values match. Let's copy and paste this for female, and we'll see the female value is slightly different. Let's do the maximum. Just as there is MINIFS, there is also a MAXIFS function, and we can say staff table, salary column, staff table gender is here. And again, I'm going to change the reference style to $3. While there is a difference in minimum values, the maximum value is exactly same whether you are male or female. I guess we have got employees in both. But how do we do it for the top 5? This is going to be a bit tricky, but not impossible. To get the top 5 salaries for male and female employees, we can use the filter function first. So for example, we can say filter staff table salary column staff table gender is equal to male. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you all the male salaries and spill them down here. So everybody's salary is going to be here if their gender is male. We can then send this filter output to either large or sort and take. I'm going to send this to the large function, large of this, and we are going to refer to that hidden column. So it's between F and H, G6, and I'll get the 120. And when I drag this down, I'll get all the 5 salaries of top 5 male employees. And I can copy this and paste it here, and we get an error. This is because the G has become H. So I'm going to change this reference again and fill this down, and we will get the top 5 female salaries. You may want to double check these numbers against the data, and that's really simple. If you go to the data, you can, for example, clear the filters on the salary and apply the filter on gender. Let's look at male. While looking at male employees, if you expand the salary filter, you should see the top 5 values at the bottom here. These are the top 5, 120 to 114, 691. And when you look at the calculation here, you should see the same numbers, 120 to 114, 691. Just as you're using the large function, you could also use the sort and take approach on the filtered data. I leave this bit to you as homework. Let's go to the next one. Our next question is list all the departments. And this kind of piggybacks on what we did in question 1. In order to get the total salary and headcount by department, we were using the remove duplicates feature of Excel. But now we are going to use the unique function. This is also a new function available in Excel 365, and it is quite helpful if you know how to use this. So here I have set up a page for our department names, and I just want to see all the departments here. We can use the unique function like this, unique of staff table department column. And when you hit enter, it's going to remove all the duplicates and you'll just get all the 12 department names. This is going to list the items in the order they appear in the data. So if you look at the data, you can see that the very first department is training, the next one is business development, and then engineering. And that is how they appear here. Many times when you are doing this kind of a thing, you may also want to alphabetically sort them. So you could use the sort function on top of the department to sort them in the alphabetical order. So now you have accounting up top and training all the way at the bottom. Let's say you want to count how many departments are there. You could of course select them and look at the status bar here to see what that count is, but that is kind of lame. So let's go ahead and count them. Here I'm gonna say count, and we can use the function count A. As these are text values, you need to use the count A function, which is helpful for counting everything. Open bracket and select this range. Now we know that the departments begin from B4, but we don't know how far they go. In this case, there are 12 departments, but in future we might do a reorg and there might be 20 departments. So this can go forever. So how far down should you count? This is where when you have a formula that is spilling the values down, Excel gives you a new operator called hash. What this does is it basically tells my formula begins on B4 and it is spilling, just go ahead and get me everything. So let's use that B4 hash, close bracket, and you can see that B4 hash actually refers to all of these values. When you hit enter, you're gonna get 12. Now let's go ahead and do some reorganization. I'm gonna go to the department data here and let's take some of these business development and make them business growth. So now I have got a new department called business growth, and when you see here, bingo, we get 13 and that growth also appears here. So that is what this does. It automatically sees that your spill range has grown and it gets the new values directly. Let me give you a small piece of challenge at this point. What if you want to see all the departments in one cell, comma separated? How would you do that? Give it a try. Our next two examples involve working with the data and looking up specific information. And we are going to learn all of these formulas along the way: VLOOKUP, INDEX+MATCH, XLOOKUP, and IFERROR. Let's say you are looking at your data and you want to find information about a specific employee. Maybe you have their last name or you have their employee ID. So maybe you want to look at this person, PRO1306. One easy way of doing this is you can apply the filters and you can search for what you're looking for. As you type, Excel automatically finds them, and when you click OK, you're going to get their row here isolated and you can get all the information. But this is manual and it requires you to do this filtering repetitively every time you have to look up someone else. So this is where the lookup formulas in Excel come in handy. There are quite a few of them and we are going to cover a majority of them in this next segment. So here I have set up the lookup worksheet, and let's say we want to look up PRO3886 as the person. I want to get all of this information for that. But notice that this C4 is an input cell, so I can type in a different number and I would like to see those values updated. Later on, we are going to find out how to build a search with the last name and learn the index match formula. But first, let's take a look at VLOOKUP. What VLOOKUP does is it vertically looks up data. So if you look at the data, it vertically looks up for an employee ID. And once it finds the ID, it's going to tell you the corresponding information. So here we are going to do VLOOKUP. It starts with the lookup value, and that's the value that we are looking up for, C4. And where do you want to look up? In the staff table. The lookup will always happen in the first column of staff table. So whatever you say, it will happen against the very first column. And then what is the column that you want to get? Now here in my staff table, you can see that we are looking up on the employee ID, and then we want to get the first name, which is the second column. If you start counting from here, this is first column, second, third, 4, 5, like that. So in this case, the first name happens to be number 2. So we can go back and type 2 here. And this one is important. If you don't say anything, Excel is going to do an approximate match, which is going to mess things up for us. So we always want to say false here. And when you hit enter, you're going to see for that person, this is their first name. Let's double check this 3886. So here they are. Ed is their first name. McNocketer is their last name, and accounting, and that's the value. So these are what we are looking for. Ed, we have already received that. So the last name is again a same VLOOKUP formula. You can directly copy this formula and paste it here. And this time change the number 2 to number 3. And for department, we can change this to 5. And for salary, we can change this to 6. One handy trick that I learned early on when I was working with these functions is, rather than manually typing these column numbers, you may want to set them up somewhere here or in a hidden column there. So for example, I would write 2, 3, 5, 6 here, and I might just gray them out so that they're not really there. And instead of writing it like that, I can point to that, and I'll make sure that C4 is absolute reference by changing the style to $C $4 like that. And this way I can just drag this formula down and all the values come. So at a later point, if I change my mind and maybe I want to see gender, which is the 4th column, I can just type 4 here and I can see that gender information there. Of course, I also need to change the wording there, but that's a different problem. Let's go back to salary. So this is how the VLOOKUP works. One problem with VLOOKUP is if there is no matching value, it's gonna just come up with an error. So for example, let's search for 3887. We don't have any such employee, so all of these formulas are gonna come up with #NA. One easy way to fix this is we can send this VLOOKUP output to IFERROR and then say, if the VLOOKUP is giving an error, print this message, not found. That way, if I don't have that person, I'll get not found. Again, note that this IFERROR is a simple check. It will look at the VLOOKUP output. If there is an error, it's gonna just print whatever you give there. But what if you're not looking for an ID, but something else like last name? In this case, if you see, the VLOOKUP function can only look up in the very first column, so my ID alone. But as we are interested in looking up in the last name column and then find the last name of SCAD or whatever else, we will need to use a different type of a lookup. And this is where there are a couple of options in Excel. My preferred option these days is to use XLOOKUP. Man, it takes a long while to write with my mouse. But if you are using an older version of Excel, you can also use the INDEX+MATCH formulas. So first up, let's take a look at the INDEX+MATCH and then I will introduce XLOOKUP to you. So here I have got my last name as SCAD and I want to look up their employee ID, department and salary. So first up, we need to find where this last name is in the bunch of data that we have. So if you look at the last name column, somewhere down here we will have that person, SCAD here. This is the person, and if I know what is their row number in all of the data, then we can kind of go ahead and get other items from that row. So this is where the match function is helpful. We can say right here, for example, match SCAD in the staff table last name, and the match type is exact match, so we'll say 0, and that's gonna tell you SCAD is the 43rd employee in the data. That means it's going from top to bottom. This person is 1 and SCAD would be 43. Now that I know 43 is the row in which my person that I'm interested in is, I can go ahead and ask questions like, what is the employee ID of the 43rd person? What is the department of 43rd person? And for this, Excel offers an index function. What index does is it looks at a data. So for example, staff table ID column, employee ID column, it can tell you what is the ID number 43. So you can type 43 directly here and then it'll tell you PR03532. We don't want to type 43. So we can point to the match cell calculation here and then that will also tell you. When you combine this whole thing into one formula, that is called index match. So normally this is how we write it, index of that, and then we say match scad in the staff table last name with 0 as the exact match and close bracket, and we will get PR03532. To get the department, it's the exact same formula. So we can copy this and this time just change the first part from employee ID to department. And finally, to get the salary, again we can change this to salary and we will get the salary of that person. Just as VLOOKUP wouldn't work if there is no value to find, if I type in a last name that doesn't exist in my data, so for example Khan, I'm gonna get all these values as NA again. And you can also use IFERROR around these functions to print a message like not found. But a more pressing problem would be, what if two people have the same last name? So in our data here, we do have some data like that. In fact, the very first rows itself have some duplication. Of course, the problem here is all of these data points are also similar. So to tell them apart, I'm going to change the salary of this second Tuxwell from 8696 to 85,000. So now different values are there, and let's see what happens if I search for Tuxwell. So if I come here and then say Tuxwell, we are going to get the very first employee and their salary value. So 80,695. This is how all lookup formulas work, whether you're using index match, VLOOKUP, or even the new XLOOKUP. Once they find a match like Tuxwell in this example, they just tell you what the value is. They're not going to bother looking for the next such employee. And this is a limitation of all the lookup formulas. So if you want to see all the employees with the same last name, you want to use the filter function instead, which I have introduced earlier in this video. Now let's take a look at solving these exact problems using the XLOOKUP function. XLOOKUP is an improved version of the previous lookup formulas, that is VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, and index match, and it can do all of those things in one formula or one function. So that is why if you are using a modern version of Excel like Excel 365, I recommend just learning XLOOKUP and calling it a day rather than knowing all of these individual things. So let's try that here. I have got a separate area for all the XLOOKUP formulas, and we are going to again look up for this person PR03887 and then get the values. Remember, this doesn't exist, so I'm going to change this back to 3886 and let's take a look at the results with XLOOKUP. So here we write XLOOKUP. What is it that you're looking up for? So the value in C4, and then you'll say lookup array and return array separately. Lookup array refers to the range of data where you want to look up, and this would be the staff table employee ID column. Return array is what you want to get back once the lookup has done its job. So in this case, it would be the first name column. So staff table first name. And that's it. You don't need to specify anything like exact match or anything. By default, XLOOKUP is going to do the exact match and then give you the result. So here we'll get the same result as the VLOOKUP, but this is how that syntax looks. You might be thinking, okay, this looks exactly same. Where is the advantage of XLOOKUP? XLOOKUP offers many other advantages, and we're going to unpack those as we go along. But for now, let's calculate all of these values as well. I'm going to copy this formula as it is, paste it here, and just change the first name to last name. This time, department, and finally, salary. As you can see, the values do match. Now let's see what happens if I search for a value that doesn't exist. So 3887. We're going to get not found here because here I have put IFERROR, whereas the XLOOKUP just comes back with NA. So the first advantage of XLOOKUP is while writing the formula itself, you can specify what to do if the value is not found. So this is an optional parameter for XLOOKUP, if not found. This way you don't have to write a if error around it. It comes part of the formula itself. So here I can say not found, and that's how that will look. And we can apply the same logic for all of these as well. Let's go back to a value that exists. So here we have got that. And if you notice carefully the XLOOKUP, instead of saying the entire table, we are going to split the table into two parts. What is it that you're looking for and what is it that you want to get? This way, even when you are not looking against the ID, let's say you're looking up against the last name, like here in Tuxwell's case, we can just swap around the columns and we don't need an index match kind of a thing. So the second advantage of XLOOKUP is it can do what index match kind of a thing does, because it's not limited by looking up only in the first column. So here, for example, in this case, we can also use XLOOKUP like this. XLOOKUP, look up this value in the staff data last name column, and then get the staff data employee ID column. And optionally, we can also say not found as the error value, and we will get the same thing. And I can do the same for department and salary as well. Another advantage of XLOOKUP is instead of returning a single column, you can return multiple values. So for example, I want to look up Tuxwell and then get their entire record here, all of their information. I could do that. I can say entire data and then say XLOOKUP, look up this in the staff table last name column, and then get the entire staff table itself. Once Tuxwell is found, I want their entire data. And when you hit enter, it's going to give you that full row corresponding to Tuxwell. As our data is horizontal, here in this case, the data goes horizontally across the screen. That is how XLOOKUP is going to lay it out. But you can also use other formulas in Excel to transpose this, that is change from rows to columns. And to do that, we are going to say XLOOKUP this value in the staff table last name and get the staff table, and rather than pressing enter, send this entire thing to a function called transpose. This is going to take rows and turn them into columns, and when you hit enter, the values will come down on the screen like that. This is super helpful if you want to, for example, present the data by looking up and retrieving entire records and laying them out on the screen. Let's conclude this concept with one extra challenge for you. Can you find all the employees with $120,000 of salary? So that means we are looking up, but we are not stopping at the first employee. We want to see everybody. How would you do that? And if you need a hint, we already covered this concept earlier in this video. Now let's switch up the gears by looking at some complex business questions. Our 8th business problem is finding out the highest salaried person. Mind you, we are not interested in what is the highest salary, which we were able to get it with the max function. Instead, we want to know what is the name of such person. So here I am putting two formulas. One is the first such person with the highest salary, and if there are ties, then list of all the people here in this cell. To find the highest salary, we could use the max formula. You can say max of staff table salary column, and we'll see that that is 120,000. Like I said, we don't want to know the value here. We want to know who is that person. So we want to do a lookup against this max value in the salary column. So we will say XLOOKUP this value, the maximum value, in the staff table salary column, and then get the staff table first name of the person. As we want maybe the full name, not just the first name, here is a little trick that you can use in XLOOKUP. When you are returning a value, you can specify a column or multiple columns or operations on columns. So I'm going to say ampersand within double quotes space ampersand. This is how you can combine first name and last name with the space in the middle, and then say staff last name. What this is going to do is it's going to look up the maximum salary in the salary column, and then for that person give you the first name and last name together as one value. So here we'll see that as Minerva Rickard dot. Let's double check this in the data. If I go to the data and look at the salary and scroll all the way down and select 120,000, which is the highest value, and click OK, we'll see Minerva's name here. And that is the value that our XLOOKUP has come up with. But as you can see, there is also MIC value here. This person also makes the same salary. Both of them are sitting on 120,000. In this case, what we want is we don't want to stop at Minerva. We want to get both Minerva and MIC's names. So that's the next formula that we are going to do. This time we are going to use the filter function instead. So we're going to say filter staff table and first name column, staff table salary is equal to maximum of staff table salary. This is going to give both Minerva and MIC's values. Again, you're only going to get first name, but you can apply the same trick with filter as well. You can select this and then say instead of first name, ampersand within double quotes space, and then one more ampersand staff last name. That's going to give Minerva Rickard dot and MIC's Strawberry both of their names in 2 cells. But what if I don't want to see in 2 cells? What if I want to see the whole names here, comma separated? We can take this entire filter output and send it to a function that can combine text values. Excel has the perfect function for that. It is the text join function. Text join, and you need to specify what delimiter to use. We want to use comma space as the delimiter, and for the next parameter we can just leave it out by typing another comma and then give the filter output. This is going to take the filter output and comma separate that and give you both names in one cell like this. So you can see Minerva Rickard dot and MIC's Strawberry here as the values. Our next example is to get all the employees that have joined in the month of March. Mind you, in the data here, we have the start date and we are looking for March across any year. So here I have got an employee that joined on 30th March of 2021. And further down here, I have got another employee that joined on 24th of March 2020. So irrespective of which year it is, if they have joined our organization in the month of March, then I would like to see them. This is where, again, we can use the filter function to solve this problem in an elegant fashion. First of all, let me show you some tricks with the filter. For example, if I say filter staff data first name, and if I simply say James, I'm not even sure if we have a James. We don't have a James. Let's go get a name that exists. Hogan. So let's search for Hogan. We'll get their record. But if I want to see all the people whose name begins with the letter H, what we could do is, instead of simply saying staff first name is like this, we can send this to a function like left of staff first name, comma 1, and that's going to get the leftmost character. And I can simply check that, is that equal to H? And we are going to get all these people whose names begin with the letter H. So within the filter function, and not just filter function by the way, even XLOOKUP and other kind of functions, you can use these kind of operations to extract portions of the data. So we are going to use the same technique, but this time look at the date. So instead of this, what we want to do is we want to say, look at the staff data and filter by looking at staff date joined, and we want to look at the start date of March. But let's just say you are interested in all the staff that have started since year 2020. You could also use greater than or equal to and then specify the date. For this, you could use the date function and then generate the date of 2021-1, which corresponds to 1st of January 2020. And when you hit enter, you're going to see all the staff that have joined on or after 1st of January 2020. We could use similar logic, but instead of greater than, we are going to take the start date and calculate the month of that. So for this, we'll say month of start staff table start date is equal to 3. 3 corresponds to March, and you're going to see all the people that have joined in the months of March. I'm going to select this date column here and apply the date formatting. You could do that by Ctrl+Shift+3, and here you can see all of these are in the month of March. Now remember, we are not done. We are not interested in all the columns. We just want to see employee ID, first name and last name. So the first part of this filter, instead of saying staff, I'm going to open square bracket and one more square bracket and select employee ID, close square bracket, colon, last name. That way we are saying, when you're done filtering, just get me the 3 columns and nothing else. So here we got all these names. We can see Hogan, Vasavi, Carlin, etc. that have joined in the month of March. Before we move to the next one, I do have a challenge for you, and that is to get all the female employees that have started on a Monday. How would you do that? Let me know in the comments. Now let's go to the last example. This complex formula involves actually creating a report. So we want to make a department report that includes headcounts, salaries, and percentage of difference from the overall average, all visualized and presented in a neat format. So here I have set up a page for this report. Up top, we want to see what is happening for all the departments, and further down what is happening at an individual department. We want to see what is the headcount, average salary, percentage difference from the overall average, and what is the highest salary. I also have a surprise for you here. I will reveal that towards the end. To get the headcount at an overall level, we can simply use COUNTA function and select staff and something like employee ID. We should get 260 for this value, and to get an overall average, we can use the average function, staff table, salary column. We are going to get the value with a lot of precision, but you can apply currency formatting by pressing Ctrl+Shift+4 and you'll get the value. I'm going to take it down to just no decimal values, and we are looking at 73,878 as the average. Remember, if you are doing this with raw data directly, this number might be different because through the course of this video, we did update the data a little bit. And this one we don't have to calculate because there is no difference from an overall level. The highest salary is maximum of staff table salary column. Again, we're going to get 120,000. We want similar formatting as this cell. So I'll select this cell, click on Format Painter and apply that formatting there. Now let's see all the departments here in alphabetical order. For this, we could use the unique function, unique staff table department. We're going to get all the columns. I thought we are going to get 12, but we are getting 13 because we did add a new department called business growth halfway through the video. So I'm just going to extend this formatting here as well. So we have that. Let's calculate the headcounts. This is where we could use the COUNTIFS function. COUNTIFS staff table department, and the department is in this range B6 to B18. But as this is a spill range, I can simply say B6 hash, and that's going to point to the entire range here. We will get the values for everybody in those departments. For average, we are going to use the AVERAGEIFS function. Average of staff table, salary column, staff table, department is B6 hash. And we are going to get these values. Let's round them up to no decimal values and apply the currency formatting. Now comes the fun part. I want to calculate how much these values differ from the overall average. So here we want to select this minus that. But we want to do these subtractions for every value here. As D6 itself is a spill range, we can simply say D6 hash minus D3. You don't have to say this as $D, $3. When you are using spillable formulas, Excel will automatically stick this reference to D3 as needed. So if you hit enter, you're gonna get all of these values. 79,000 here is 5,827 more than the average there. Let's apply currency formatting on this one as well, and we'll get that. And you can quickly see which departments have more average and which departments are lagging behind. While this red coloring helps, there is also another trick that you could use. You can select this column and apply conditional formatting and use a data bar to quickly see where the values are so far ahead or where they are behind. So I'm going to add a solid data bar, and let's go ahead and customize this by looking at the manage rules and select this rule, edit it, and I'm going to adjust this rule. So instead of automatic to automatic, what I want to do is I want to make sure we can read the bar as well as the number. So first step, what I will do is I will just say show the bar only here and click OK. That's going to give me just the bar. And then I'm going to insert another column here. And in this column, I'll say equal to and then E6 hash. So we're going to get the same values again. And in this range, it also copied the conditional formatting. So I'm going to take out that conditional formatting. So we're only looking at the values like that. I'll take down these values by reducing the font size a little bit and just change the color to that. I also don't want to see the red coloring here. So I'm going to go to format cells. And from currency, I'll just change this to that style of formatting so that it comes up like that. So these numbers are showing up in an adjacent column, and I'll just size this a little bit like that so that we can now see the bars as well as the numbers. Finally, I'll select these two cells and merge and center them so that that comes up nicely up top in the middle. Finally, let's calculate the highest salary for each department. This is nothing but MAXIFS, staff table salary column, staff table department is my B6 hash. We're going to get the maximums for every department. Again, let's apply currency formatting. I'll select this column here, click on Format Painter, and apply that formatting here as well. So there you go, a concise department report that tells you what is happening and shows everything. I did forget a couple of steps. Number one being sorting these departments in alphabetical order. So I'm going to select this unique function and add the sort around it. And like magic, all of these values recalculate now that these departments have changed. Now time for surprise. How would you calculate these values? I want to know what is the median as well as what is the female ratio in each of these departments. What kind of formulas would you use to come up with these numbers here as well as up top there? Go ahead and give it a try. That's going to help you unlock and learn some new techniques with formulas. I hope this video has given you a complete and thorough understanding of all the important Excel functions and formulas. In our next video, we are going to look at a different way to analyze the data, and that is pivot tables. I'll catch you in that video. Until then, stay awesome. Bye.